Hi,
Good.
everybody. This is
Hi,
Caelan
everybody.
Huntress, and I'm joined here with Angela Maiers, and we're talking about the current state of speaking because we're both professional speakers. We both do a lot of virtual, but Angela has been a top-notch live keynote speaker for a long time. And, when the pandemic started, everybody's business model changed. But now things are opening up and there's in-person speaking events. So Angela, now that you've been on the road, what's it like out there?
Oh my gosh. So perfect timing, Caelan, to talk about this because I've just come back from 2 solid weeks on the road, 6 different cities and 6 different kinds of events. So the number one, I guess, exciting thing to acknowledge is it feels wonderful to be in person. There's just no getting around seeing human beings and being able to hug them and look at their faces and all of that. So that's a beautiful thing. In general, not only every event that I attended, but every conversation I've had with event planners, attendance is absolutely down. So there's still a very big wave, I would say about 25 to 35% of conferences are reporting attendance down, even though they have online or hybrid versions. The attendance is down in that. People are just choosing to forego just the conference experience in general. And that could be due to a lot of things. It could be due to still fear of traveling and fear of coronavirus, fear of crowds. It's not in the budget. It's unbelievably, I mean, we got the benefit during this time of a little bit of not worrying about budgets and the amount of money it takes to put on even a small live event, the travel there, hotels, all of that. So that's definitely one of the trends.
So what's the experience like when you're there in the room? Is it same as it used to be, or has it changed?
So unfortunately, I will say, if you took it and then compared what it was 2 years before, other than people just are like, I'm so happy to see you. It's the first time I've seen you and get past this. They haven't adjusted the in-person experience. And this is, a 7 live events is a very small sample, but in general, it's like, oh my gosh, that COVID thing is over. Oh, other than checking your passport for COVID, there isn't really, I guess I was thinking, so I'm thinking specifically about this one really major event in technology that is once a year that was canceled. It's never canceled. It was canceled 2 times. And so I thought that the organization, that the event people would structure for and emphasize these human attributes and these human elements of being together and put that at the forefront. Nope, didn't even address it. So when you look at the stories of the last 2 years of what impact it's been on human beings and human organizations to not be together and what that dialogue is, instead of that being front and center and what we do moving forward, because of that collective challenge and trauma, it was like it didn't even exist. That is the past. We're looking at the future, and it was business as usual. So some people could argue that that's what it should be. I argue differently. What do you think, Caelan?
Well, it's a shame that the things that worked in the past are what they're trying to do now in the present, because this is a different present than we had before. Things have changed. The audience has changed. The people have changed. And so trying to use the previous version of live in-person events, now, I mean, people don't feel as comfortable shaking hands, seeing faces, being in a room. And I think that needs to be part of the experience, is acknowledging that we're different. And so now we're going to do things differently.
Yes.
It was one of the big advantages of going virtual, is that it forced us to do things differently. And we got used to changing how we did things.
Yes. So, all right, so let's flip the script and look at the state of virtual. So you and I, we met in training, PhD level training about how to not even just reframe or rethink or adapt a little bit, but how to completely transform the experience of virtual based on science and elements of our humanity. So in all of that training and all of our work that we've done with virtual, now that technically that could be over and we're back to live events, what's the state of virtual now?
Virtual it's people disdain virtual now, that there's an ability to get back live. They're like, okay, that's what we're doing. And I'm
Absolutely.
seeing virtual interest really plummet. And I think part of it is because so many Zoom meetings are bad.
Right.
Zoom meetings are easy to do bad. And people have sat in boring meeting after boring meeting where they're just staring at a screen, that they assume that if it's virtual, it's going to suck. And so when somebody like me comes in, or you comes in, and we say, hey, we're going to have an interactive experience, let's do something together, it really enlivens people, because they're used to just sitting and passively consuming on Zoom, which is the wrong way to do it. If you're not in the same room with someone, it's really hard to demand their attention. So you have to earn it by inviting contribution, by giving engagement activities.
Absolutely.
And so I still get people coming out of my virtual events, Angela, who are stunned that they had a great time and that they were able to enjoy themselves so much and learn so much from the content, because their expectations are so low. But what I'm finding on the hiring side is that meeting planners and event organizers, they look at virtual as this stepchild that we kind of had to deal with for a little while, but now let's ignore it, which is a real shame, because it means that there's all these interactive capabilities that we have with hybrid events where you do live and virtual at the same event, and people don't want to do it because it's so easy to do badly.
Absolutely. I think you said so many wise things, as always. But I think the totality of the experience with all of the time that we had in virtual, I think people would still say that virtual is mediocre at best. The goal is to not be completely, it's almost like traveling today. Like your expectations are so low. All you're looking for is just smooth sailing. You're not looking for an extraordinary experience. You're not looking for spectacular. You have no expectations for that. You just don't want it to be so horrible that you fall asleep and everything. So in saying that, I don't think a huge portion of the globe got to experience what you and I have experienced together.
Right.
Both as facilitators and as instructors and as learners. And I think that's the key, is a huge part of the beginning of the pandemic. We delved into being learners. We didn't just like, here's a packet of cute little icebreakers that you can do. We had to experience and then step back and look 360 from every vantage point and every touch point, what the totality of that experience would be. And that's an entirely different burden. And I don't say burden like in a bad way, but that's an entirely different weight to carry as an instructor. Like one of the benefits of going live was, oh my gosh, like the stress level was so much lower. Once you got past like the travel, like the days where everything in the environment, from the music to the tech to the background to the imagery to the coloring of the room, all of that was on somebody else. All I actually had to do was get on stage and do my thing and then walk
show up
off.
and shine.
As a virtual presenter, you're everything. You're the MC, you're the tech team, you're the ambiance setting, you're the concierge, you're everything. And so I have to say,
really good
from
point.
like a selfish perspective, that was really nice to like just think about my content, nothing else but my content.
Yeah. Well, you bring up such a great point, Angela. I think that's part of the reason why it's so easy for virtual to be done poorly, is because the onus is put on the speaker to also do the AV tech. And
absolutely.
For a lot of speakers, that's really challenging. I'm lucky that I happen to be one of the speakers who can do that, and I produce my own meetings while I present. But it's still, it's a huge technological burden on top of everything else that I'm trying to do. And that burden is multiplied when you have two audiences at the same time, when you have a live audience and a virtual audience in a hybrid meeting. What have you seen with hybrid meetings lately?
Okay, so let's talk hybrid, whether it's a hybrid meeting, it's a hybrid conference, it seems like a great compromise. So in person, sort of still the golden situation. And then the stepsisters, like as a default, it should be, as a default, it's been like, okay, we'll get through this until we get back to live. So I've been really pushing event planners and conference organizers to think of hybrid as their mainstream. That's the golden buzzer. That's everything. Put all your effort, all your energy, all your design and planning into hybrid. And your default is if it's live and the technology doesn't go down, or it ends up being all virtual. And I think that is really tough to do. So let's talk about hybrid from a presenter's standpoint. True hybrid, not like we're at a live conference and we'll live stream or Zoom somebody in. That is not what I'm talking about. It's hybrid.
That's bad hybrid. Yeah.
That's bad hybrid. Yeah. So talk about, from a presenter perspective.
Well, as a presenter, when you're presenting hybrid, you have two audiences simultaneously. You've got the live audience that you're there in the room with, and you've got the remote audience that you're presenting to remotely. And that's if you are in person. But you can also present hybrid remotely, where they have you up on a screen in front of a live audience. And you're also presenting, but the activities and exercises that you give for one audience have to be modified for the next audience. You know, I'll give you an example. I think I've got this picture up here of a conference I presented at recently where we were playing rock, paper, scissors.
Yes.
And I was virtual. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I was able to do this exercise hybrid because I modified a virtual exercise.
Yes.
And you can do exercises that are in person and remote. There's a combination that you have to, a synergy that has to happen to get to hybrid where both audiences feel engaged and entertained.
Absolutely. So I think the only way around that is a really deep, very conscious onboarding process. So whether you're physically engaging or virtually engaging with your audience as you're planning this. So like one of the things I do is send a packet, or I, have the event organizer make a packet. So every participant got an envelope from me that says don't open. So an envelope from me, and they couldn't open it till they saw me streamed in. And then everything in that envelope was an action-oriented exercise that we did. It was like a trigger to do something because I lost all my ability to, like, everything that we've learned about every button and every aspect of Zoom and every virtual platform to engage people. So no polling. And I mean, you could poll, but like no chat feature. They don't have a laptop in front of them. So they're face-to-face with each other in small groups, but you're not there. So these physical objects, it's almost like you are transporting and connecting two different universes, and you have to jump between both of them and plan the experience on both of them. And by far the hardest thing for a presenter to do right, because the event planners I'm learning on, the conference organizers don't plan that. They're not thinking about that. They're thinking about content. I'm plugging you in this slot from 10 to 11. I'm plugging that person next, and I've got these participants. They are not thinking about the totality of the experience on either end. So it's a heavy load, but when done right, it's actually an extraordinary experience to know that, and you can watch them do deep things together in person, and that you're there as a part of it to add another dimension. I think that is the future, and that should be our default.
What I love about that, Angela, is that you're giving an experience for them to do together. And like the keynote is more than just content, because somebody can watch a replay of your keynote, but they don't want the content. They want the transformative experience. And what we learned from going virtual for so long is that we can't just talk at people and expect them to engage. We need to involve them with an activity or an exercise or something that lets them contribute to the experience. And I think that contribution, where the audience gets to bring what they know, what they feel, what they're experiencing into this container that we create, then we can create something transformative.
100%. I think that, so if we summarized everything into one sentence, Caelan, it would be this, from both the presenter and the organizers, that you must, absolutely, unequivocally must design for contribution. 99.99% of event, conference, experience design is about consumption. What is the presenter going to say? What are the slides going to be like? What am I going to ask the participants to remember? What are the objectives of the thing? You will get this, this, and this. You will walk away with it. Consumption, consumption, consumption. Transformation happens when we are invited as human beings to contribute. Designing for contribution is an entirely new field because it's not been asked of either party. So that has been my biggest joy, my biggest challenge, my biggest, I think, takeaway from both hybrid, from virtual, from actual in life, is that everything now is through the lens of not when will they contribute, because they will, but how soon can I ask them to contribute safely, psychologically safely, how often, so it doesn't interrupt the flow. So it's not so much interaction and so much contribution that they're like, why were you here in the first place? What good are you? But like trying to balance and organize my entire scenario and an entire event around contribution. So
yeah, that's been the biggest change.
Biggest change.
That's been the biggest change I've seen, is that, you know, previously, before the pandemic, I used to create my experiences around content, and I'd do the slides and I'd say, what am I going to say? Absolutely. But now I start with the exercises.
Me too.
And I start with what is the audience going to do? Because I know I got to get them engaged right in the first couple of minutes.
Connection,
and if I'm going to ask them to do connection before content, that's right. Yeah. Connection before content. Absolutely. Yeah. 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 And so I think that's the biggest thing that we're seeing, is that the connection is now, it's baked in, that if that connection isn't offered, then the audience is going to tune out. So where do you see the speaking industry going for the rest of this year? What do you hope to see over the next few months?
So I actually hope to see more thoughtful design, because now that you know, and now that you have experienced extraordinary, it's very hard to go back to mediocre. And it isn't, the onus isn't on the speaker, even though that's part of the job, is that if you're the main stage speaker, the good and bad of the conference falls on your shoulders. I think part of that still is true. Like, you're there, especially as a keynote, to set a tone and to honor the vision and the goals of the conference, which usually has a theme or like a message throughout. But in the end, you, as the speaker coming in, you've got to have really equipped conference planners, conference organizers, and you have to, I believe, select your keynotes differently than you did in the past. That somebody that is extraordinary charismatic on stage, I have seen them absolutely wilt and crumble when it's virtual. And then I've seen people that I don't know if I would go and watch them on the main stage and see them as a keynote, who are phenomenal at these intimate interactions and getting us to be vulnerable and getting us to reveal our humanness in an inhuman context, that they're a gift to virtual. Like, you and I have trained with some of them, and yet I don't know. So I think that it's another dimension that we have to think about, not just, this speaker speaks on this topic, or this speaker is liked or not liked. It is who can adapt most to what I hope to be varying dimensions of the experience. We have the technology now, we have the capability now, we've got to have the ingenuity and imagination now to, and the courage, quite frankly, the courage to not just do like we've always done, and create different experiences, whether we are virtual or whether we are live.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, and I think that's what you and I bring to the conference experience, is being able to collaborate with the meeting organizers to figure out what's going to make this the best for the attendees.
Absolutely.
So if you've got a conference coming up, whether it's live, whether it's virtual, whether it's hybrid, Angela Maiers and I are both professional speakers, and we like talking about how to make transformative experiences for an audience. So feel free to reach out to either of us if we can be of service in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Caelan. I learn every time.
Thanks, Angela.
I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely.
This was a lot of fun.